Yeah, and you know, Charles and Dave do that on the hymns just about every week. You may not notice because you're singing, but you know, the organ matters for a church. It really does. Because one of the ways that you get in touch with your faith, that's just one of the ways, is through the gift of music. You know, you have it through the gift of art, all of the banners that we have around and the varieties of artwork which are available. You know about the nature of faith and relationships through books that you read. You know, an engaging novel that just drags you and pulls you along. There are any number of ways in daily living that God touches out to you with faith and asks you the question about trust. I was reading a story about a high-wire bicycle rider, and he decided one night at a show just to test the crowd. And so he, you know, went out to the crowd and said, "Do you believe that I can actually do this?" And with this, he had taken away the nets and, you know, all the safety gadgets. He said, "Do you think I can really cross this wire?" And everybody shouted, "Yes, you can! Do it, do it, do it!" And then after a pregnant pause, he said, "Okay, who's going to ride with me?" Nobody did. That's the difference between belief and trust. You believe somebody can do it, but that doesn't mean that you trust that they really can. And that is what the lessons are about today. It's about trust as faith. Now in the Bible, faith is a verb. It does not translate that way into English. You know faith as you have faith. In the Bible, you don't have faith, you are faithing. You are doing faith. And that is what the lessons are reflective of on this day, because faith is always about relationships, always. I know those of you who have kids, you have trust and faith that when you say, "I want you home at 10 o'clock, depending on age, of course, they'll be home at 10. And if they are not home at 10, they have broken faith or trust. And so the level of trust in all of our lives goes up and down. I mean, there are any number of times that I tell Sheffy, "I'll be home at such and such a time." And even as I say it, I know I'm a lying sack of dog meat. That's on the TV. Oh. Oh.
You got proof.
Yeah, you got proof. Yes, well, she doesn't need proof because she knows. And so, I mean, in every relationship, the level of faithing, trusting, goes up and down, up and down. It's always changing composition. And that is how faith is described in the Bible, in the readings. Now, one of the ways that Jesus talks about faith and the way he taught faith and trust in God was by means of shepherding. And you know the word shepherd and shepherding and sheep without a shepherd. It's one of the well-known images or metaphors throughout the Bible. But it's quite amazing if you ever get a chance to see how shepherds there's still some that still work this way in the Middle East in particular. Every shepherd gave every sheep in his flock a name. Every single sheep had a name. So and therefore a personality. And so if Joe, the sheep, was going that way and the shepherd wanted it this way, he would just yell out, "Joe, get over here." Just like you would to your kids, or to your husband, as the case may be. And Joe would come over. But this is how it worked. There was a relationship of trust and faithfulness that cut both ways. But of course the shepherd was the only one who was able to reflectively think about what the nature of that relationship was and his faith and trust toward them. And they, of course, wouldn't think. They just instinctively would trust that he knew what he was doing. But in anyhow, what Jesus is talking about with the disciples and with us is the gift that has been given to you and I. The gift of faith as trust, and also the call to pass that on to others, so that we become shepherds to other sheep. You all know people who do not have their lives together, who are not wrapped tight, who are so stressed out and have so many balls juggling in the air that they can barely manage to get through the day without freaking out. You all know people that way. And part of your calling as a shepherd, one who follows Jesus and has trust in his way, is to mentor them. That would be the present day word if you don't want to use shepherding. You could use the word mentor. Where what you are doing is you're helping them to identify and think through 4 questions. Who is God? That's first. Is he trustworthy? All of the things that he's done throughout history, he's prevented us from killing ourselves off. Even today, he has put people in the right times and the right places, late in the game often, but gotten them in the right places to end wars, to provide for people who are hungry and starving. He has been there and done that against human opposition, against fighting against human sin of greed, of self-centeredness and selfishness, and the over-accumulation of things and stuff. The second question that a good shepherd will always address is, who am I? Who are you as a human being? You know, the varieties of answers are legion, as you well know. I was reading an article by a professor from Ashland Theological Seminary, and he had visited Ephesus, right? Paul's second letter, which we read a part of last week and this week and for the next 4 weeks. And he walked down just one main street, and he found this, not unlike us today, in terms of beliefs. Whether it was faith or belief, you know, always hard to know. There was one statue to the god Aesculapius. Now, those of you, I take it everybody eats garlic? Okay. All right, good. And you know that garlic is good for you. It's healing. It's good for your blood pressure, and right, it keeps your blood vessels open and all of that, you know it. Well, this particular god, Aesculapius, grew garlic as a remedy, and he was known as a healer god. And Zeus got so much protest from the gods of the underworld that he killed Aesculapius, because Aesculapius was saving too many people, and the gods of the underworld weren't getting enough business. Yes, I know that's Greek and Roman mythology, but nonetheless, you get the idea of the kinds of things that people believed. I have a friend who did eventually die, who ate several garlic cloves. When I say several, I'm talking in one sitting several times a day. Garlic, whole garlic, several times a day. And yes, that exudes through your entire body. And yes, he stank. Big time. But by God, he lived long. And he was one who was a believer, you know, in garlic. There was also the god of Hermes as he was walking down the street. There was the Emperor Domitian, the son of God, as all of the Roman emperors were. And there was the goddess of victory. Do anybody of you have Nike sneakers on today? Any of you own Nikes? Okay. Nike was the goddess of victory. So yes, if you want to run fast or walk healthily, get Nike. That was my commercial for the day. And then you had statues to Hercules. Those of you who are bodybuilders and want to have hot bods, you would worship the god Hercules. Then hopefully you would end up with a six-pack without having it sprayed on to make it look like you have one. And then there was the god, son of God, Emperor Trajan. And then finally the goddess Artemis. Her temple was one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. And she was the goddess of the moon and of hunting, and the patron saint or the patron goddess of young girls. But you see, all of the varieties of belief which were present in Ephesus are also present in our time. We have all kinds of things that we believe about life. I was talking to a friend of mine, a younger man who listens to Clearview Radio overnight show until he falls asleep. And Clearview Radio, the show he listens to, is all about conspiracies. All right? And just after I had talked to him, interestingly enough, my wife and I were in the car together, and we were driving through East Stroudsburg here, and I looked up and there was a helicopter. And I said, oh, it's the FBI. I wonder what they want. They're looking at us there. I'm not using my cell phone because they're listening in. Well, my wife, of course, just looked at me and said, you're such a dope. And I said, I am not. That's an FBI helicopter, and they're listening in on everything. She said, it's a hospital helicopter. I said, it is not. Well, yeah, as we were coming past the hospital, it was landing. Yes, I was a dope. However, I was also vulnerable for that period of time to a view of the world in which I did not trust God's action in the world and believed that it had been taken over by conspirators who were going to arrest us all with their little black helicopters. There are lots of beliefs in the world, so I'm fully aware of all of them. And that was true in Ephesus, it was true in Jesus' day. That is why he said people were like sheep without a shepherd. It's because the leadership of that day and the leadership in Paul's day, the leadership even in our day, is not shepherd-like. It is not the kind of shepherding in which people are being matured and growing in faith and trust. And therefore, if you don't trust the world in which you live as God's world, you're going to behave in a certain way. You're going to be reticent. You're going to be hesitant. You're always going to be looking for the other shoe to drop because somebody's going to screw you. And it just goes this way. And what Jesus was teaching the disciples, as he was teaching us, was that part of your call and mine is to recognize Jesus is the good and the true shepherd, because what he has promised, he has kept. He has promised from the beginning of time through God the Father to love you, to care for you, and to support you at all times and in every occasion. Now the thing is, in order to be supported and cared for, you have to trust that the people who come into your life are actually there for that purpose sent by God. And at the same time, you are called as a pastor shepherd to care and to shepherd and watch over those people with whom you come into contact. When you look through the Bible, you see that Jesus offered himself up as a reliable shepherd and was very consistent through his whole life to the point of dying, so that he would remain a man of integrity and honor as a shepherd. You have throughout the Bible men and women who have done that very thing. Jethro kept Moses from having a nervous breakdown. And Moses was about to have a nervous breakdown in the desert. He said, I just can't handle this anymore. God, kill me now. Difference is, he didn't say it as a cast-off line. He meant it. Kill me now. I can't deal with all this mess. And Jethro, his mentor, came up to him and said, you know, sometimes you have to trust other people. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to take 70 people. You're going to train them, mentor them in leadership, and allow them to disperse into the 12 tribes and act as judges and as leaders in there. And then you'll meet with them, so the pressure will be off. You'll be able to get rest, sleep, eat, and become a healthy person once again. Deborah, the judge, identified Barak as an outstanding general, a guy who had very low self-esteem and very low self-worth, wanted no parts of it. But Deborah mentored him into believing in himself, and he led Israel at that time into winning a war which lasted, the peace lasted for many, many years. You have Philip mentored the Ethiopian eunuch, and in the Ethiopian Coptic Church today, that Ethiopian eunuch is revered as one who started the first orphanages in the world, because he himself could not have children. He decided, since he was the treasurer in Ethiopia and had access to money, he was just going to adopt everybody that didn't have parents, and did that. You have Paul mentoring Titus on the island of Crete. Barnabas mentored Paul. So you have Paul mentoring Timothy, and in 2 Timothy, this is sort of the shepherding. If you need a working definition of it for your own life, here it is. 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 2. The things that you have been taught from me, entrust and pass on to those faithful who will be able to teach others also. And that is your calling and mine. We know that there are people and a God, most assuredly, that we can trust and have faith in. And because of that, we're able to then mentor or shepherd other people into that same kind of faith and that same kind of trust. Now, the way in which you're going to be approaching that, Dallas Willard, who has studied this for much of his life, says that there's really 4 key things that as a person of faith and trust, growing in trust, if you're going to grow in trust in God and therefore the world around you, there's 4 things you're going to be doing. And it's going to be hard in our culture, but just do it anyway. First is you're going to learn how to be in solitude. Solitude is not loneliness. Solitude is your intentional time that you take away from everybody. You back away from everybody. You find your quiet time, your quiet space. I have 3 parking lots here in East Stroudsburg, and I will not tell you where they are, that I go to at any given point in the day when I need to get away from everybody, so that I can be in solitude and learn about the people in my life and think about them in a different way. And the way to think is always as Jesus did. What did he do with the disciples? As dumb as they were sometimes, as ill-decisioned as they were, ill-advised sometimes, he had determined that they were going to be mature, to grow in faith, and to grow in confidence and joy in the Lord. And so by stepping back in solitude and looking at them in a different, more healthy fashion through the eyes of God, he then could come back refreshed and do that. So that's the first thing you should all be doing. And that means turning off your cell phones for a time, not being on the social media for a time, just being in solitude. The second thing is also equally important. It is the gift of silence. I don't know where you all go for silence. I know in our house it is almost impossible to find silence. It's really quite irritating because I'm the one who's usually noisy. But silence. But not silence just for no reason. Silence because it allows you to quiet the voices that are always in your head. You can't get away from the negativity on social media, the informational communication stuff on social media, and the negativity on TV, and the violence on TV. And it is precisely that which is really important. That's why Jesus, in that scene that we have from the gospel, they're actually back and forth across the Sea of Galilee several times in the central and northern parts, moving around. That's because silence is important, because it stills the voices which are always there for us, in our heads and in our ears. Psalm 46 says, "Be still and know that I am God." Silence is a time for Sabbath. Now, the other things that he says which are important, there are 2 of them. Is one, engagement in life. That you want to be engaged in the life of the people around you. And you want to do it by looking at them in a particular way. You want to look at them as people who are growing in maturity, growing in wisdom. As a shepherd mentor, you want to pass on the wisdom you've accumulated. Even the bad wisdom you want to pass on to them. The stupid things you've done in life. And pass on to them that as well as the healthy things. And finally, study and teaching. People always must be in learning mode. And if you're going to be a shepherd and a mentor to other people, you want to be teaching them and helping them to study all of the time. Now, in the gospel And in Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, he recommended that you teach people 3 things all the time and model it as a mentor with wisdom all of the time. The first is the art of reconciliation. That is, you know people who hold grudges. You know nations that hold grudges and threaten each other with war and death and killing all the time. Your calling as a shepherd is to teach and practice the art of reconciliation. That is, bringing relationships which are broken or tenuous back into a stronger relationship that calls for both work, maturity, a muting of the passions and emotions, and an encouragement, and can take a long time to do. You'll notice Jesus never set a timeline on anything about that stuff, reconciliation or forgiveness, never set timelines, because it does take time to do. The other piece of it is edification, where you're building up other people's lives. I think there is nothing easier in this world to not edify people. I mean, we are so vulnerable to criticism, and we do such dopey things sometimes. It is so easy to pick out the chinks in our armor that it is a no-brainer. We could pick each other apart without any problem at all. You know that as well as I do. And the more you know people, the easier it is to just pick them apart. Jab, drill, and zap, and hurt. The way Jesus taught in his shepherding and mentoring role was by means of edification, pointing out those potential and latent gifts which are present in the person's life, and helping to strengthen them and teaching them about how to make good use of it. And the final thing is simply staying outwardly focused enough as a shepherd so that you can meet physical need. And that's important too. That's why we have a food pantry. That's why we do spaghetti stuff. That's why we do some clothing stuff. That's why we go to the Social Security office with you if we have to, or to the medical welfare offices, or to an attorney's office, or to court. We do all those things with you. And we do all of that because that, in Jesus' understanding, is meeting physical need. It's not all about physicality. It is also about emotional and psychic need. Now, these are the functions of a mentor. It is the gift that you have been given, but it's all predicated on one thing: the difference between belief and trust. And it is that to which you have been called, and it is the gift that you have been given. The gift of trusting that the Lord loves you deeply, has equipped you for living in this world, and provides you with worthy mentors that you will be surrounded with. People who can help you to learn and grow and mature. You'll notice in the 23rd Psalm, and I will close with this: the Lord is my shepherd. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. You understand, and you've heard this in funerals, I know you have from me. The rod and the staff is not the walking stick. The rod and the staff are the people that are next to you who can provide support, guidance, and direction and learning. That is the way God works in real life. And when you think of yourself as a shepherd, mentor, you think of yourself also as a rod and a staff who can offer support and direction. That's the wonderful gift that we are as a congregation. There's no other reason to be a congregation. There's no other reason for us to gather together. I mean, we function as a whole church only because of the trust that we have in each other, that each of us is going to help in the household of faith to give money so that we can work and do the kinds of ministries that we need to do. Without that, it don't work. And it's the same in our own individual households. You've got to trust the people you're with and grow into trust. But it's always with the understanding through the eyes of God that you're able to trust people, and in the process help to shepherd and mature them into trustworthiness. Because our culture does not encourage trustworthy people. All right, you don't have to encourage trust in people, right? All you have to do is have a 9-page list of obligations and duties that you have to perform in your job. You don't have to trust anybody. It's not trust. That's the gift we've been given. And it's our calling as pastor shepherds to mature people, to edify, to teach them how to reconcile with the world, and also to recognize human need and act on it. It's the very gift that we've been given by God, daily and every day of our lives. Amen.